So I'm delighted to be joined today by Fatima Rafiki, who is part of the Access to Medicine Foundation team that created their recent report on progress in access to antimicrobial drugs. So Fatima, welcome. Glad to have you here today.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
So I put out a newsletter, which will be linked below, about the report. And I thought it would be fun today if we could just talk about the report and its construction and sort of the core messages that are out of it. So take us through what you think of as the essential high-level points of the report and how it works.
So the Access to Medicine Foundation works to bring the pharmaceutical industry to the table. So what that means is that we collected data from companies within specific research areas that are relevant for, in our case, antimicrobial resistance. And by doing that, what we do is we look to see what kind of progress the actions and commitments pharmaceutical companies have made in the specific research areas. So R&D, how are companies faring in terms of their pipeline? What kind of pathogens are they targeting through their projects? How many projects do they have in the pipeline? How many of those are targeting those critical and urgent pathogen as identified by the CDC and WHO? And that provides insight to other companies as well in terms of what's in the pipelines of their peers. And so it gives you a comprehensive view of how many projects do we actually have in development at the moment, how many medicines, how many vaccines, and what do they actually target, and where in development are they? So providing you a good sense of to not only companies themselves, but to stakeholders in terms of where we are in progress around drug development. We look at responsible manufacturing, and so we look to see how companies are strategizing around minimizing environmental risk. Do they have strategies in place? Are they transparent about their strategies and the progress that they're making? Are pharmaceutical companies actually providing access to medicines? And so we look to appropriate access in terms of, are they registering their drugs? Are they making sure that these drugs are available to those that need it? And what type of patient impact do these particular access strategies actually have? Are they reaching those who do need it? And we also look to stewardship as well in terms of, based on the responsibilities that we've identified for companies, are they making sure that they are mitigating for conflict of interest when they're developing any educational materials? Are they adapting their drugs to those that need it? And are they participating in surveillance programs and providing data that's necessary to track trends and to be able to support the right guidelines to be developed?
So I suppose you could say it differs from like the WHO pipeline report in that you've taken, eyeballing it, there are about 20 companies that you've done a report card on approximately, whereas the WHO pipeline reports are about the whole kit and caboodle. You've chosen to go deeply into this group of, if you will, leading companies and look at their, and by creating a report card, I guess I infer that you show examples of what is possible. What could individual companies do?
Yep. So we look at the 8 leading large research-based pharmaceutical companies that are still invested in R&D for antifungals and antibacterials, and we look at the 9 generic medicine manufacturers that are leading in this arena. And so we collect data from these companies to be able to help assess and understand exactly where they lie within these 4 research areas that were deemed relevant by our stakeholders and experts. And so R&D, responsible manufacturing, appropriate access, and stewardship. And so we were able to collect the information that we needed from these companies directly, and then we were able to assess them and provide performance reports. And so not only within the report cards do we report how they perform in each of these areas and the progress that they're making, we also report on their pipelines, on their portfolios, and provide that information very clearly. And that's one of the ways where we differ from the WHO, is that we're much more focused in terms of the companies that we look at, but the WHO's criteria for innovativeness, as well as the information on their tracking of these pipelines, are what we use to verify our pipelines. And so we rely very much on the WHO to make sure that our data is correct as well.
Yeah. So this is the third iteration of the report.
This is the third iteration of the report.
What have you learned over time? Yeah. Tell us the high level, what has happened? Is it good or is it bad?
Sure. So progress is being made, but obviously not at the scale that we need. And so within R&D, there are more projects in the pipeline. There are more projects that target those critical and urgent pathogens that are necessary to be to have attention paid to. And we have, since the first iteration, more companies are focusing on ensuring that those projects are going to be protected once they are approved and on the market, and also accessible. And so that was great to see. You only had 2 projects in 2018 versus the majority of the projects in 2021. So R&D, there are gaps in the pipeline in terms of pathogens that need to be targeted where there are no projects, and there aren't enough projects. And so R&D is an area where we are seeing progress, but there's much more that needs to be done. And so that's a discussion on its own, and we know how far that goes in terms of resourcing and incentives and the need for, more stakeholders to be involved.
Yeah, but deep down, the science is hard, and it's a labor of love over 10 to 20 years to find those novel mechanism classes. I mean, and that's a theme that I harp on a lot. So you mentioned access and stewardship. Are you seeing good use of the, Carbex and a group of other stakeholders put together a sort of a template stewardship and access plan that we wrote about in the newsletter a while back? Are people using that? And has that actually helped get to the point where you're seeing more people with a plan now that they've got a plan they can take off the shelf and adapt?
Yes. So most of the projects now are covered by a plan. Many funders are stipulating that plans are in place for projects they are funding. So that's been great to see. But what we need to do now is to really track the quality of those plans and track the impact of those plans. And so in the work that we're doing in our research program, as we're going along, we'd like to really be able to do a deep dive into what it looks like now for those projects that were planned for and how are they progressing. And so we'd like to really be able to continue that work of not only quantitatively looking and checking the box to see who has plans, but what do those plans look like when they've been implemented, and how do we support the improvement of those plans and the evolving of those plans as they go along.
Yeah, I have been very impressed with the level of energy that WHO has put into helping the other half of the plan. The other half of the plan, of course, is the countries. You have to have both sides of it working. I've been delighted to see how much of that side of its work is coming into fruition as well. More countries with national action plans and good tools for implementing those, because we need it all for access and stewardship to work correctly. It's got to all be in there. Well, I'm encouraged that you're seeing progress. I think that's fantastic. And there is indeed more to be done. Is there any sort of summary message that you'd like to leave everybody with about, the ATMF report? And you've told us a little bit about where you're going next, but any high level summary of this?
So this report was written for all to understand. It's not something that is specific to one stakeholder group or another. We really work towards making sure that we're informing all the public stakeholders and anyone who's interested in understanding how companies are progressing in their fight against AMR. And so for us, it's a labor of love, because not only do we assess pharmaceutical companies and hold them to a higher bar, and make sure we're convening with all the right experts and stakeholders so that we're setting that bar appropriately, and we're pushing for progress. We also want to make sure that the other stakeholders involved, such as governments, investors, understand how their role and how their actions can support curbing AMR. And so it's a report that is written in a way where it really appeals to all, and
Yeah.
it informs.
Yeah, and I entirely concur, and it really does work well. It's got great messages, a very nice, balanced, constructive tone, critical but constructive. It's good to see both those things brought together. So continuing on a yearly basis, every other year, what's the approximate frequency planned?
So we have worked on a every 2-year cycle to put out the benchmark reports. In the next year, we're focused on doing a deep dive in those key research areas
Right.
that we highlighted as key findings. And so we really want to work on doing a deep dive into access strategies. We want to do a deep dive into R&D and also do a deep dive around manufacturing. But we're also going to continue to track companies on the opportunities that we've provided them. And so how are they progressing around the various areas that we've noted for them that they can progress and do more within?
Yeah. Well, look forward to those reports. I see the cycle now. You're going to spend a little time thinking about how to ask the questions even better. And that'll turn into the fourth version of the report. Fantastic. Well, thank you again for taking time to walk us through the report. Again, I'll say below the links to all this stuff you'll find, newsletter, the report itself, all that's down below the video. And keep up the good work. And kudos to you and the ATMF team. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.